All right, everybody, and welcome to Horsehead Weekly, week number 7. That is right. We are almost at halfway point of the season. Halfway point of the regular season is weird because it's 13 weeks, so it's like week 16 and a half. So after this week, we'll be over halfway. Last week, we were just before halfway. But the Tuesday night game happened, so I'm going to call this the halfway point. So welcome to the Horsehead Weekly, the halfway mark of the season. Very excited to do this on a beautiful, chilly Sunday morning. So let's just get into it because I got stuff to do, you got stuff to do, and it's Sunday morning, and I got to get this video out so people can watch it on YouTube before kickoff at 1, or else it's pretty much useless, like, like most things in life. So, and as always, we got to go fast. So, last week, what ended up happening? Well, there were some really good games, and there were some really, really bad games. The top game was a really, really bad game. Now, you're probably thinking, well, it was really close, and it was decided by a stat change. Well, when the two teams are, third and fourth least points scored in a week, that's not a good game no matter how close it is. Neither of these teams deserve to win, but James ended up pulling it out by less than half a point, so congratulations to James on that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we had two games where both teams played extremely well, but only one team could win, and that was Mike, again, continuing to play extremely well, putting up the most points for in the week. I believe this is 4 of the 6 weeks we've been playing he has had the most points for, and he has absolutely had a breakneck pace. This is insane. I don't know what's going to happen. He's going to need a really bad week in the 2 weeks of the playoffs that he's in because he's probably getting the bye in order to make something happen. Or maybe he can stumble. Maybe there's an injury. Who knows? But he looks unstoppable right now. And he continues to play up against teams who play really well that week. And Malcolm, the milkman, sorry, you ended up putting up very good points but being unable to do it, you ended up being the third highest points for. So that just doesn't end up working out for you. And then another very good game, very close game, and a game where a lot of points are scored. Matt S ends up taking down Doug. Now Wednesday night, when everyone laid their heads on their pillows, and they were getting ready to doze off, Doug thought that he was at 4-2. Matt S was panicking and having thoughts of how do I do in the fight for 50? Like, should I start? Nope, you were fine because when you woke up in the morning, you were not 2-4. Matt, you were 3-3. Doug had the same record as you because you had a huge set of stat corrections. You went up, Doug went down, and because of that, you are at 3-3 and actually leading your division at the moment, according to Yahoo. I don't like the way Yahoo decides who's leading divisions, but hey, that's just how it goes. So yeah, we ended up having two games decided by stat corrections, both going the way of the brothers James and Matt. And then in the other games, we had the other Matt taking out Jerry, who put up less than 100 points. Well, he blew up his team since then, made a ton of changes, so let's see how that is going to end up going for him. And then we have Dave taking out a very surprisingly poor showing from Tyler. I thought he was on the comeback train. I thought those first 3 wins were a little bit fluky. And then suddenly he just drops a 106. I think it was just an issue for the week. It wasn't an issue long term. And he's also made a bunch of trades to really bolster his team. His team looks a lot better now after that last week's performance, so I think he's going to be doing just fine. And then finally, we had Sean moving to 5-1, still setting the pace, even though I think Mike has a better team. Sean has just been continuing to put up wins and high point values, and he takes out Nick, dropping Nick down to 2-4. So as of right now, we have in the Skullhouse division, everyone's tied at 3-3. Jerry is clearly the leader as he has the tiebreaker both head-to-head and divisional wins over everybody else, which means it's going to be very hard for someone to win the division if they tie Jerry in wins because they have to both win, so they have a draw in the head-to-head tiebreaker at 1-1, and then they also have to go to the and have the other person in the division beat Jerry. So it's a 2-2 divisional record for both teams, and then or they have to sweep. So it's going to be very difficult. So yeah, what's up? Yeah, you look really good. Yeah, you look beautiful, B. Can you bring me your what? Can I have your sip?
No, because I just sipped it with my bee plumper.
Oh no, thank you then. Thank you though. That was Jenna. She's on her way out, and she looks absolutely gorgeous today. So if you see her out and about, tell her that she looks good because she does. Anyways, so that division looks like it's Jerry's for now, but as you can see in the streaks, no one won a game last week, and I did not win a game for the last 2 weeks. I was at 3-1. Now I'm down at 3-3. I'm getting a little bit spooked. My team is definitely not performing as well as it did a few weeks ago, so I guess I'm just gonna have to hope that I can make something happen. But moving along, we have Kathy's Kids, which is another very close division. Every division is very close at this point in the season. 2-3-3 records, and then Malcolm, the lone 2-4 in that division, but he does have the breaker over James at the moment, and he's putting up a lot of really good points. His points against are absolutely abysmal. He has over 800, which is something only 4 people can boast. So sorry about that, Malcolm. You just have a really bad points against it this time. For the insiders, we have Dave at number 1. He is 1-1 in the division but he is 3-3. At number 2 in the division, we have Nick, whose only wins have come inside the division, and then we have Matt, who is in last in the division. He is at 2-4 as well, and has not won a game in the division, which is going to make it very hard for him to win the division heads up. So he's going to have to win just by strictly having more wins than the other 2 teams. And then finally, we move on to the outsiders, where Sean has yet to play Tyler, but he did hand Mike his lone loss, which is going to have huge implications later on if these 2 teams continue to set the pace at 5 wins, a full 2 wins ahead of anybody else in the league. That's absolutely insane at this point in the season, especially for a league like ours, which has so much parity. So in both of them are putting up pretty decent points. But if you look, nobody else is above 800 points except for Dave, Sean, and Tyler. And Sean has the second most points for at 840. 975 for Mike. He is absolutely on a tear. And it's not even like he's doing that against the bad teams. He's putting those numbers up against the really good teams, and he's just slaughtering them. Almost 900 points against, where most people are not even at 800 at this point. It's just absolutely baffling. It boggles the mind, some would say, how good Mike is doing. But that's just a little recap of the standings, a little bit more in depth than I tend to do. But that's just to give everybody a heads up because it is halfway through the season, letting everybody know pretty much what's going on. And for the most part, at this point, Tyler is probably looking for a wild card slot. I mean, he has to make up 3 games on the division winners, and then he also already has a divisional loss to Mike. So it's going to be kind of hard to make that happen. Plus, with those 2 teams performing as well as they are, it's going to be hard for him to be able to close the gap because they're probably not going to lose many games. But other than that, every other division is pretty much wide open. Tyler's the only one who's really starting to hone in at, okay, how do I get a wild card slot? And remember, just because you don't make the playoffs doesn't mean you're out. There is still the Eliminator, the Fight for 50, and Roto World. So all 3 of those you can still win money on. And the Fight for 50, again, no one is eliminated from winning money and at least getting half of their money back, that last $50, until the first week of the playoffs is done. And that is only when 2 teams are eliminated. Then there's still a bunch of teams going for the Fight for 50 and a bunch of teams playing in the playoffs at that point and stuff. So still plenty of money to be won. Do not get discouraged, anybody. We are still doing great in this league. Speaking of the Eliminator, this is what happened last week. I ended up getting eliminated. I ended up getting my 3rd strike. Deservedly so. I don't really think my team has been performing that well the last 2 weeks. Obviously, I lost twice, and I haven't put up over 120 in either of those games. I haven't put up 120 in 3 of the last 5 weeks, and yeah, those 2 weeks in the middle, I'm beginning to think maybe were a little bit more of an aberration. They were just a player or 2 who typically wasn't going to perform well, just kind of spiking, and I just kind of got a little bit lucky with that. And then, because like week 3, I had Mixon do well, I had McCoy do well. I had a bunch of people performing very well, and then lately they haven't been able to replicate that. So, you know, if it was week 3, I probably should have been a seller at that point. I thought I was a buyer, so I was trying to, really milk every coin, every molecule of value I could out of the players that I had. People saw them for what they really were. I wasn't able to make the deal, and then since then, week 4, my team performed good, and then the last 2 weeks, it's been absolutely just garbage, despite the fact that I've had some players who have done very, very well. Um, and on top of that, I've also had a couple injuries and stuff like that. So it's not. And my IDPs have also been performing pretty poorly, so I'm shaking those up now. But yeah, it's not great, but I am out of the eliminator. My baby has taken me out once again. One day I might win my own creation, but for now I don't have that. But that means that I have joined James, Jerry, Nick, and Matt M. So 5 people have been eliminated, 7 people are left, so 3 strikes to be given out this week, and it could be a triple kill because we have 4 teams at 2 strikes with Doug and Tyler both joining the 2 strike club. Matt S narrowly being eliminated, only surviving Doug by a few points. Come to find out that stat correction really important for 2 reasons for Matt S. He not only did that stat correction get him a win, it also kept him from getting eliminated, which meant we would have been down to only 6 teams left. But it keeps him alive at 2 strikes. So right now we have Dave, M, Mike, and Sean, all of them sitting at 0 strikes. So that is fantastic for them. Mike, again, as I said earlier, he has been the top scorer in the last 3 weeks and 4 of this first 6 weeks of the season. Absolutely insane pace he's been putting up for everybody trying to follow. But other than that, he also, we have Dave, M, and Sean doing a very good effort at staying in the top half of the standings, which goes to show why Sean has been doing as well as he has. Dave, don't know what's going on with him, why he's only at 3-3. He has been putting up pretty good numbers, but maybe he's just been getting, medium lucky instead of lucky or bad lucky. But yeah, so Malcolm, Matt S, Doug, and Tyler, all 4 of you going into this week, you have 2 strikes. You are on the verge of being eliminated. So, do your best, do what you can, try to stay alive, and 3 people will be getting strikes this week. So, in theory, it could be Mike, Dave, M, and Sean, and we could have another 3 strikes after that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think somebody's getting eliminated this week. It'll be really interesting to see who that is. And if 2 people get eliminated, we are then down to 2 strikes for a little bit, and I think that'll be really interesting to see how that works out as we are slowly beginning to put the squeeze on some of these people as more and more lower tier teams get eliminated. Now on to Roto World. People were complaining that the numbers were way too small on Roto World. So I decided I'm going to make them bigger, and instead of doing, quarterback and running back with each other, I'm just going to do them individually, and it does look a lot better. I don't know why I didn't do that before, so thank you for that suggestion, everybody. So what we got going on right now is we have at quarterback Tyler. He ended up making a deal to pick up Matt Ryan, and that has been working out very well for him. He got 34 points last week in order to maintain his lead on the league and actually extend a little bit as it was the highest scoring quarterback in the league last week. So he ends up being number 1 at that with Sean and Dave M very, very close behind within 10 points. And then Malcolm holding on for hope that he can get up to number 1. Only 30 points behind, and that's something that can easily be made up over the course of a few weeks. And there isn't really anybody out of it yet. This is a whole 16 weeks. This doesn't end at the end of the regular season. So we have, how many weeks left? 10 weeks left. So even Jerry, if he can end up making a trade or acquiring somebody who's really, really good, he can shoot up the rankings so he can get there to the top. But for now, this is what we got going on for the quarterback with those 3 really in control and Malcolm just hanging on to them at this point. At running back, still Mike absolutely demolishing it. He's got CMC, and as I've said before, he could have CMC and me, and he'd be putting up 30-plus points a week. It's absolutely an insane pace that dude's putting up. I think he's averaging something like 9 points per game more than the number 2 running back. It's just absolutely just bonkers how well he's been playing. But that being said, it's still not over. anything can happen, and there's a lot of teams that are still fighting for that number 2 position at 12, and who knows what can happen with CMC. Maybe he starts to break down a little bit. He has been absolutely a workhorse the last few years, so who knows what can happen with that. But still anybody's game here at their running back position. Over in the wide receiver position, Mike has lead here as well, but it is a lot closer. He only put up 15 points last week, which was a lot less than he's been putting up lately. I mean, he's been an absolute terror at every position, including wide receiver. But putting up those low numbers meant a lot of people were able to close the gap, including myself. I put up 56 to lead the league last week. Nobody else put up any more than 30. Very bad week for wide receivers, and I had Stephon Diggs, who was, I think, the one wide receiver who actually performed well. So a very bad week for wide receivers meant I got to climb up the ranks and move up to get myself 6 points at this point and put myself within 30 points of the lead. But again, a lot can happen any given week, especially at wide receiver because it's so volatile. So you can have people come in and they can get, as we saw here, Mike can put up another 15-point week next week, and James can put up a 50-point week, and suddenly he's 10 points ahead of Mike, and it completely changes the way Roto World looks. So a lot going on, a lot of people very, very close, especially Jerry, although he did just trade away Julio, so who knows if he's going to be able to sustain this pace. And Nick, who is at 10 points right now, but he is currently leaning on Tyreek Hill, who just lost Patty Mahomes. So who knows, again, if he's going to be able to sustain that pace, but very interesting in the wide receiver department. Over at tight end, we have Matt S. continuing to kill it with Austin Hooper? Anyways, Hoop, dude's been absolutely bonkers this year. Who would have thought that a team with as many receiving threats as Arizona or Atlanta has? Why is my brain dying? Was able to just put up these bonkers numbers at tight end. And you know what? He's making it work. He's clearly Matt Ryan's favorite target. He is locked in. But there is a coaching change on the horizon potentially for Atlanta. There's been a lot of rumblings about are they going to, go somewhere else? Are they going to have to get a new coach? Because the management and a lot of people don't really like what's going on. So who knows? This could end up very easily being a very different looking offense. But I think even if that happens, Matt Ryan and Hooper clearly have a connection right now. They're making it work, and I think he's going to continue to put up good numbers. But again, anybody's ball game still. There's still a lot to be played, and we always got to look to the future. It's looking good there. At defensive line, as we move into the IDPs, Doug continues to be number 1, but that gap was closed significantly by Sean, as Sean is now only half a point back, and those two are really the top 2 contenders right now, with Mike, in the same ballpark, with Tyler, Jerry, and Malcolm, all kind of like they still have a sniff of Doug, and then everybody else is just kind of following behind there. At linebacker, Matt M and Matt S, and Mark and Tyler and Mike and Malcolm. All the M's and a Tyler all kind of sitting up at a big clump at number 1. I mean, that's how it kind of works for linebacker because, you're always going to have good weeks and bad weeks. And, it's linebacker is just a really volatile position as well. And we only have one of them. And at defensive back, Mike, again, continues to show up near the top of things as he is number 1 after putting up a huge number last week with Landon Collins. I think it must have been a touchdown or multiple interceptions or something. But yeah, he put up absolutely bonkers numbers last week against the Miami Dolphins. And so that puts him pretty clear at number 1 with Matt S. and company following suit behind. And then finally at kicker, we have a lot of teams very, very close. Malcolm, Tyler, Sean, Matt S., Mark, Doug, and Mike. All of them in the same ballpark, all of them really fighting for that top spot. And then we have Nick, Matt M., Jerry, James, and Dave M. For some reason, really just lagging behind. Who knows? Maybe there's some kind of weird tier that is going on with kicker right now. But Malcolm's finally beginning to see some dividends from that very, very early Justin Tucker pick. as he has finally been able to move himself into that number one position for kicker. Um, and Tyler, who was number one last week, with a pretty decent lead on a lot of people, has fallen significantly, and he is now down to only number two. But that's just going to change after a little while. So that brings us to the standings. We have Mike at number one. Obviously, he is dominating in points for, so that's going to translate to a lot of points in Roto. Number one, running back, wide receiver, and defensive back. At number two, we have Sean, who isn't leading at anything, but he has 3 second place places and a third place. So he's looking pretty good. Definitely giving Mike a run for his money. And then we have Tyler at number three, Matt S at number four, Malcolm number five, and then so on and so forth. A lot of things can be changed. It doesn't really take that much for somebody to go from maybe like 2 points at a position all the way. They just jump all the way up to like 8 points because there's a lot of very close things in the middle. So if you can make a couple good moves and move up in a couple spots, you can easily pick up, 10 points over the course of a week or two. And you can definitely climb the rankings. It's just going to be very hard to beat Mike because, again, he just is really good at a lot of positions right now. But, you know, stay strong, everybody. We can take him out. If we work together, we can take him out. And who's going to be trying to take him out this week? Well, that's Nick. And based on Patrick Mahomes going down early in that game, that's going to be very difficult for him. Losing your quarterback going into a game, not a good look. That was supposed to be 30 plus points for him. So best of luck to you still, Nick. But I don't think you're going to be making it out this week. Now let's go back up to the top and reset this. I am up against Malcolm this week. That is going to be a very close match, mostly because my team is missing its number one and number two pick in the draft, who I have on my team still. One is on bye and underperforming. The other is injured. So it's going to be really close. Hopefully I can make it work. Best of luck to you, Malcolm. Then down here we have Sean and Tyler in that divisional battle that was mentioned before. They're going to be fighting it out, and Sean's looking to stay in first place in the division, and with a win, he will be able to be 2-0 in the division, be looking very, very good. But he did not get a lot out of his player on Thursday night, so that's going to be hard for him, especially with Tyler's new look team, who I think is going to be moving up to 3-4, and giving Sean his second loss in the Horsehead Fantasy Football League. At the number 4 slot, we have another divisional matchup. We have James versus his brother in the Brother Brawl, which I will get to in a minute. Hint, hint, it's the game of the week. Then we have Dave versus Jerry. Both had significant playing time so far already. I think this is going to be a close match, but, giving it to Dave because I think Dave's team is I think it's a pretty decent team. And then finally, we have Matt M starting the week out at -1 points because of a kicker up against Doug's Farm Upstate, which is still somehow projected to score less points, despite the fact that it is actually positive at this point. So best of luck there. I do again. I have the insider or outsider, whichever one you guys are, up against my division. I have you guys winning, and hopefully you guys do. I would love to move up to 4-3 and have my division mates fall to 3-4. It'd be really nice. So hopefully you guys can make that work for me. Now moving on to the game of the week, as I said, it is the Brother Brawl. There is no reason not to have it be this. It is a very emotional game, as it is brothers. It's a very close game, both for projections and also if you give it just the eye test. Just top to bottom, these teams both have a lot of very, very talented players too. And even if they're not the most quote-unquote talented players, they're also players who have great matchups. Like, you wouldn't look at Josh Allen and John Brown and be like, oh my God, that's a great tandem to have. Well, they're playing Miami, who probably couldn't beat my cousin's Pee Wee football team because they are in the Super Bowl today, and that is why I'm doing this early because I'm going to watch them play later on today at Stillwater. I don't know who he's playing, but probably a team that's not as good as him because he's related to me, so he's probably really good at football. Because someone in my family had to get the genes that I didn't get. So we have Josh Allen and John Brown over on that side, and on the other side we have Carson Wentz. Well, he's not throwing to anybody on that team. It still has quite the receiving core with Galladay and Hilton, both of those very very good, and then Tyler Lockett in the flex spot. I mean that's an absolutely insane threesome. And then Dalvin Cook and Jones. I mean just that NFC North bludgeon duo. And then you just have really solid players at every other position. I mean, James, I poo-pooed your team earlier when I said how bad you performed last week, but you beat me, and I think your team is actually really freaking stacked. So best luck to you. And then on the other side, best luck to you, Matt, as well. I mean, you got a lot of really good players. Robert Woods is like the one guy who I think is, I think can really do something this week. I think this is going to be Jared Goff hopefully being able to turn himself around. I think Robert Woods is going to be the key to that. Le'Veon Bell, he's not going to be good this week because it's New England and they're going to say, who do you want to shut down? Le'Veon Bell, the guy who's getting paid $1 billion to play football, or the second-year guy who's just coming off of mono? I mean, they should probably try to shut down the second-year guy coming off of mono because Brady likes to kiss people on the mouth, and you don't want that happening by accident. So I think you want Darnold to get upset and not want to offer Brady a smooch at the end of the game. But hey, whatever you can do to make your team work out. But yeah, I think they're going to shut down Le'Veon Bell. I think they're going to make him throw, and I think they are going to be able to lock down the wide receivers enough that it's going to be a very miserable game for the Jets, and I think that's going to cause Bell to not really be able to do much, especially because I think New England can put up quite a few points. And yeah, so I don't think Bell's going to be very good this week. But you do have Tevin Coleman up against a Washington team who almost lost to Miami. So, man, that was, whew. Yeah, so he's going to have a good day. And then you have, Hooper and Michelle and a whole bunch of other people on your team that are very good. I think this is going to be a very close game. It's going to be a very fun game, very high scoring game. And I'm very, very excited to see how it's going to end up working out. But moving on to the deal of the day, this, as I mentioned earlier, Jerry blew it up. He took his team and he traded away its two biggest assets in Julio Jones and Chris Carson. He traded them over to Tyler, and in return, he was given Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce, Juju, Golden Tate, and a linebacker. My God, he downgraded at wide receiver one, going from Julio to Juju, and he downgraded at running back one from Chris Carson to Eckler, but he also got Travis Kelce and Golden Tate, who, looked pretty good in his first game, and Jordan Hicks. I mean, I think dude got some pretty good value. Now, these are two teams that needed vastly different things. Tyler needed to consolidate a lot of what he had because he had a lot of people who were good. They had good value, good names, good potential, but they were underperforming, like your Juju. Um, and he also had a lot of people who, might not be as good in the future, like Austin Eckler. And what he did is he changed those little pieces and he moved them around, and he ended up coming down with two absolute studs. So I think that worked out very good for Tyler, and it also worked out really good for Jerry because he really does need to break up these really big pieces and go after having a much more diverse team, a much more I don't know what the word for it is, but a team that is much more distributed points wise, like who's earning points. And I think Eckler is going to be very good for the rest of the season because I think that they're definitely going to be saving Melvin for the next couple of weeks as he tries to get acclimated to playing football again. They're also going to want to keep Melvin fresh for the playoffs because I think they're going to want to just um, if they make it that far, if they, continue to lose, and they're 2-4 right now. If they continue to not play well, I think it's very very easy for them to just kind of be like, okay, fine, we're putting Melvin in, he's running every single play, and we're just gonna eventually win the game off of him. And then you have people like Travis Kelce, who Matt Moore is I think gonna fall in love with because he's a great security blanket. Yeah, Matt Moore can sling it. He can just lob it downfield for for Hill and stuff like that. But I think that Kelsey is going to see a little bit of an uptick with the backup quarterback in. So that'll be a really good pickup for the next few weeks. Not that you knew that going into this, but that's still a thing that happened. And I think Juju is going to eventually be good as well. Again, and as I said, Golden Tate was also a pretty good pickup. Even though there are a lot of mouths to feed out in New York, and it is Jones distributing that ball, I think it's going to be pretty rough. And Jordan Hicks is a pretty good pickup too. So I think this was this is a great way to look at a trade, a great example of a trade where two teams needed two vastly different things. They were able to come to an agreement on value for players, and they were able to make it work. So Jerry got an entirely new look team, and Tyler upgraded his many players into two incredibly solid players and a handcuff. So well done everybody, well done. But moving on to the rankings. So for the stats for this week, as you can see, Mike for the last 3 weeks, and these are the last 3 weeks again, absolutely just demolishing everybody. He is 171. The next closest is Malcolm at 138. It's just absolutely crazy that difference. And then you basically have a ton of people all in one big blob in the 130s. All pretty close, all, scoring fairly regularly in that area. And then when you get down near the bottom, you see that the standard deviations begin to go up. And, you have people like myself and Jerry and Tyler who I think have much better teams than have been scoring that way. But hey, here we are. And then at the bottom, you have James, who somehow is very consistently putting up very, very bad points despite having a very good team. I think that changes this week, though, and you'll see that reflected in the rankings. But moving on, we have the C class, and in last place, we have Nick. Nick, I was going to probably put you in this C class before you had the injury to Patrick Mahomes, but I got to tell you, dude, with Patrick Mahomes being out for, I'm predicting 4 weeks and the bye, so 5 weeks in total, you are in a very, very bad way. And especially if they're going to keep winning with Matt Moore like they did against Denver, there's no reason for them to really try to stretch it out and rush him. And or there's no reason that they wouldn't try to stretch out his time off and rest him and make sure he's completely healed before they put him back on the field, especially because he also had the ankle injury earlier on in the year. So I think this could be a really good way to heal him up, get him back up to full, bring him back after the bye, and then just destroy the rest of the league and win a championship. I think that's what their aim is at this point. I don't think their aim is to win, and I think they have a couple of very winnable games in the next few weeks. So, in a division that's not that good, I think they can definitely sit on Mahomes. So that is one of the reasons why you're down at 12. The other one is you are leaning on people like Allen Robinson and Jordan Howard for your team. Matt Breida, those are not the type of names that you really want to be waving around saying, oh, yeah, I'm totally happy with these guys. They're great. I mean, Matt Breida isn't a timeshare. Yeah, he's going to have a good week this week. He's up against Washington. I could have a good week running against Washington. Well, for one play until I got my back broken. But, I mean, he's in a timeshare that's probably going to be a three-way timeshare with a team that's going to be wanting to throw the ball more and more as the season goes on. Because I think Garoppolo is going to get more and more comfortable, especially with those receivers getting better and better. I think it's going to be one of those teams that's going to slowly transition the other way instead of doing like the New England thing, where you throw all over people early on in the year and then you eventually transition into a running offense and a defensive-based team. Um, Jordan Howard, I mean, who knows if Miles Sanders is ever going to show up? If he does, Jordan Howard's not going to be worth anything, and I don't think he's going to be worth much anytime soon either. I mean, he's not putting up a lot of yards. I think he's broken 50 yards one time over the last couple of weeks. That's not really what you want to be looking at, and he's not that good. He's just putting up a lot of touchdowns and stuff, which is great, but you can't really rely on touchdowns to come. And I think that's going to start to regress soon enough, and he's just going to kind of fall off on you. And then you have Allen Robinson, who is fine. I mean, he's been performing well. He has that pedigree, but you also have to remember that they were playing without Taylor Gabriel for a while, and Trubisky's been having injury concerns lately, and he's also not been looking very good. So I think that teams are going to eventually just realize, like, yeah, we can just kind of, you know, their offense isn't really doing a good job of running the ball either because Montgomery is just putting up like 2.5 yards per carry, which isn't great. Definitely a lot less than you'd like to see, especially under that three line. But yeah, I think that they're just going to be able to say maybe, okay, let's just key in on Allen Robinson. We don't have to really stack the box. We don't really have to not stack the box. So let's just go out there and just feel the game out and then just destroy the Bears. I mean, it's just that's the way it's going to end up looking. They're going to have to lean on their defense. And if you're leaning on your defense, you don't really want to be slinging the ball around because that's a really easy way to give the opponent more time on the clock, keep your defense on the field for a lot longer, clock time wise. And I don't think that's going to end up working out for them. So I'm not a huge fan of Nick's team right now, especially with Derrick Henry also having some really spooky yardage numbers the last couple weeks. I don't think he's been getting a lot of touchdowns, but again, can't really rely on that. That might start regressing soon. So I don't know. I think this is a very spooky team, and I have it at number 12. At number 11, we have Jerry. He's fallen down one slot, strictly based on the fact that I don't know how his team's going to perform this week. I mean, Juju's on a bye, so we don't get to see what he's going to be like. I think he's a bounce back candidate after the bye, though, so I really do like him. I also think I put him at number 11 back when Todd Gurley was still like really spooky and like, okay, well, is this contusion going to continue to hold him out for week after week after week, or is he going to end up being a guy who's going to come back? Is he just had to take 1 week off to just recover a little bit? I mean, it's just kind of got some spooky stuff going on. And again, as I said earlier with Golden Tate, like a lot of mouths to feed. But if Golden Tate's the guy who's getting most of the targets, I mean, we've seen Giants teams what they can do. They just pick a guy and they throw the ball at him all the time. That's what OBJ was, and he was really, really good. Now he also was an exceptional talent. He was an exceptional receiver, but I think Golden Tate also has a pretty good pedigree, and he can make something happen with that. You also have Austin Eckler, who again, like I said, I think they're going to lean on him for a little bit, but who knows what can happen with that. So I think it's going to be it's a very confusing time for this team. But if he comes out and he puts up good numbers this week, and I see a lot of things trending in the correct direction for him and making his team look a lot better, yeah, I'm all on board for it. Especially if he gets Cam Newton back and Cam is Cam. Jerry could easily be shooting up the ranks soon. At number 10, we have James. James, as I said earlier, I like your team, but it's not performing, so I really can't justify putting you up very high. Um, Aaron Jones put up a phenomenal score 2 weeks ago. Last week, not so much. Um, I don't know what happened to Dalvin Cook last week. He definitely played, but I think they just unleashed um, Kirk Cousins last week, and that absolutely was the difference maker. Um, it almost won me the game because Dalvin Cook did not get a billion points, and that was really helpful. And Stephon Diggs did. I just couldn't make it happen. I can't believe I put up over 40 points on Stephon Diggs, and I still didn't manage to put up a win on somebody who put up 117 points. That's insane. Um, but anyways, I still, like I said before, I like a lot of what got going on your team. I like that you have some pretty good people on your bench as well. I think, Goodwin, as I said earlier, I think San Francisco is going to slowly begin to give Garoppolo a little bit more leash. Latavius Murray should 100% be in your starting lineup this week, considering Kamara is out. James, for the love of God, if you are listening, please put Latavius Murray into your lineup. Dude's going to go off this week. He is guaranteed to be getting like 100 yards and a touchdown. Like, get that dude in your freaking lineup. Um, but yeah, other than that, I really like your team. I think it looks really good. Last week it was number 4. Obviously, I really liked it then. I still like it now. It's just you haven't been putting up numbers, so I just need to see it happen. And that's it for C class. In the B class, we have Matt S. Um, as I said before, and when I talked about the brother brawl, it's you got a lot of good players on your team, a lot of good people looking good this week. Um, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse again, but I think you got a really good team. It's you're just slipping in the rankings because you're not putting up the best points right now. And I'm also a little bit spooked about some of your players like Mike Evans. It seems like he's the number 2 receiver at this point, which is not great. And John Brown and Josh Allen, yeah, they're good this week, but what are they going to be next week? Um, I, they're not going to be as good, I don't think. I don't think they're good because they don't play Miami every single week. Now they do play Miami again this season, Um, so they'll be good then. But people like that. Coleman, he's in a three-headed giant, but again, this week he's got a great opponent. So I think this week you're going to be very, very good. With Woods and Allen and Brown and Coleman all having great opponents, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to sustain that long term. Um, and that's why I have you down number 9. But if you go out and you show me that I'm wrong, then that's fine. No, prove me wrong. I would love to see it. But for right now, I think that your team is not great at the moment, and we'll see how you look next week. Number 8, we have myself. I really toyed with the idea of putting myself down number 9 behind Matt S. Um, just because of the fact that I think he has some players that have a little bit more long-term appeal. But I decided to leave myself here for one more week. Um, I am on that Minshew mania still. I think this is another week where he could put up a lot of points. Hopefully he does. If not, then I'm going to be sad. But yeah, then you have, you know, just a lot of players that I bought thinking they would be, or I drafted thinking they would be very, very good because they had great names and stuff like that, and just didn't end up working out. I mean, if you said in the preseason that LaShawn McCoy would be getting more carries than anybody else in Kansas City, and then I'd have Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, OBJ, Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, if I said that was what my team was, you guys would be drooling over it. But I think I may have held on a little bit too much to that idea of let's build a great team that I would have loved to have drafted. Um, and I also looked at players, as I said earlier. I looked at a lot of players. I saw them performing really well, and I said, cool, these guys are performing really well. They're just going to continue to perform well, and they just haven't ended up pulling that weight again. I should have sold them when I had the chance. I mean, Mixon, OBJ, McCoy, those are all people that I 100% should have sold on a few weeks ago, but I didn't, and that's sad. So hopefully next week I can start, you know, making some moves and stuff. If I have some players who perform well again, maybe I can get, Stephon Diggs. Maybe he's gonna end up being a real thing. Maybe they're gonna start opening up that offense a little bit, especially in a dome at Detroit. Um, maybe Mixon will be able to show a little bit of value for people, so people will begin to look at him and go, oh, maybe I want him. But we'll see what happens with all of that. At number 7, we have Doug. Um, Doug's team is in a really, really awkward state this week, where he has to start both Denver running backs because he has no James Conner. Um, I feel like he might have been able to do better if he made a deal somewhere, but if that's what he had to do, that's what he had to do. Um, he does get Saquon Barkley back, but at home on a potentially wet field with an ankle injury or knee injury that he's coming off of, I think it might be a little bit. It might be a little risky for him. They might play him, but they might play him a limited number of reps. So he might not. Yeah, I wouldn't predict him to be getting a big game this week. So that's also hurting his ranking a little bit. But again, he did move up. He moved up to 7 from ninth because he's been putting up good numbers lately, and it's on the back of players like James Conner, Philip Lindsay. He's got pretty good wide receivers in Edelman and Fitzgerald in this half PPR format, and even Aaron Rodgers. He's been looking like he's becoming competent again. He's not the Aaron Rodgers of before, where he's throwing 50 passes, scoring every touchdown. But he's looking like he's trending in that direction again, and maybe that'll be what he ends up being. Um, the bad news for Doug from last week, though, is he did lose Will Dissly probably for the rest of the season. I'm not sure why he hasn't been put on IR yet, um, especially considering the fact that it's an Achilles injury. I mean, those things don't heal very quickly. But Doug moves up to number 7 because I do like that he's been putting up a lot of points, and he gets Saquon back this week, so I got to move him up a little bit. At number 6, we have Sean. Um, I haven't really liked Sean's team for a while. I still really don't. Deshaun Watson is good. He's been putting up really big numbers. Um, and he also has Marlon Mack and Evan Ingram and Michael Gallup. But no, he also has Mike Williams. Okay, so now I understand why he's at number 6. Oh, he's got Chris Godwin on the bench. Yeah, he's got a really good team. He has a lot of very, very good players on his team. Um, he isn't one of those like stack stud lineups because he's still starting like a Miles Sanders when hopefully he would be starting somebody else. And Damian Williams has just been looking absolutely just abysmal. Like, I mean, you saw him on Thursday night. He had 9 rushes for 7 yards, and he had 3 targets for 2 receptions for -1 yard. I don't understand why they're not just leaning on Shady, and that's just not my bias. That's legitimate. Like, I really think that they should be leaning on him, and I think Damian Williams is not going to be good. But you could easily just put Chris Godwin in that slot position, and suddenly your team looks a lot better. Um, and your really only hole right now is Miles Sanders, from having a team full of very competent and good players, which is a lot better than some teams, including mine. So I think you have a decent team. It's just you really need to either make Miles Sanders be good. I don't know how you can manage that, um, or maybe try to make a deal where you package Marlon Mack and Evan Ingram because a lot of people are very desperate for a tight end right now. Maybe package them and get back 2 running backs and an okay tight end or something like that. Try to make something happen where you can make your team a decently better team. But for now, I think you're doing fine. You're putting up decent points. You're got a decent looking team. Your team is performing well. Really can't complain about Sean. I think he's been doing pretty good this year. At number 5, we have Malcolm. Last week he was number 13, so clearly he's moved up in the rankings. Um, he has Tom Brady on his team, who is very spooky to me because there are just going to be games this year where they just say, okay, we're just not going to do anything with Brady, and that's just going to be a thing that happens. Another spooky thing, he has several running back committees, the Buffalo and Tampa Bay one specifically, and those are not great, in my opinion, to have, because I don't know what they're going to be on any given week, and if I don't know, then it's really hard to make that pick. And if I did know who was going to be the guy every week, then that means defenses can game plan against it, and that's also not great. So it's a very, very tough position to be in, but even with that going on, it's not like he's starting 2 different committees. He only has to start one of them every week because he has Josh Jacobs as his other running back. He had a very great pickup with the Lazard. There's got to be something with that. The Lizard Man. I don't know. Lazarus. I don't know. Make something happen. Um, and his other big hole that he has at tight end. But again, he has like Nick Chubb who he can play, and then really he can push. So when Lazard isn't being as important, he can have one of those running back committees. Whoever has the best matchup, whoever's supposed to be the guy that week, he can put that guy in the slot. Um, and he's got Darius Geis in his IR slot, which is really annoying to me because I like Darius Geis. I wanted him to stay in my IR slot. I just had to do some fancy shuffling to keep my team, viable for a couple weeks there, and I ended up having to drop him. But yeah, I mean, I think he's got a pretty good team, top to bottom. Brandon Cooks and Scary Terry are both very scary plays on any given week. But hey, they could be good if Goff ends up coming around and Washington continues just to feed McLaurin, then I think you're in a really good position with that. So yeah, I like Malcolm's team. I think it's a pretty good team. It's a pretty good setup. And yeah, let's just go on with that. Ugh. And number 4, we have Dave. Dave is just barely in this tier. I think his team is really, really good. Especially if Devontae Freeman continues to perform. If he can perform at a high level and he can continue to be a borderline number 1 running back, I think he can be very, very good. And this is gonna, because I mean, then you have from top to bottom, the number 1 quarterback in the NFL right now for points for fantasy leagues. Now that Mahomes is out, Tyler Boyd, who is the only game in town out in Cincinnati, who is performing well. Cortland Sutton, who has absolutely come on like a ball of fire lately, and even though the team only put up 6 points and looked miserable against Kansas City, he still managed to get you over 10 fantasy points, so that bodes very, very well. I already talked about Freeman, Mark Ingram. That dude's been an absolute battering ram as of late. And then George Kittle, top 3 tight end for the rest of the season. That's what you got to predict. And then, who does he have here at his flex? Alshon Jeffrey, the number 1 receiving option in Philly. And then, whoa, hey, what do you got down here? So if Lamar Jackson doesn't tickle your fancy enough, you got Kyler Murray. If you need another running back, well, you got Kareem Hunt coming off a suspension eventually, and Alvin Kamara, who just happens to be out for a week or two now. That'll be absolutely great to just throw in there. Who else do you have down here? Oh, Tyrell Williams, the number one receiving option in Oakland. Marquise Brown, aka Hollywood Brown, the absolutely phenomenal player out in Baltimore. Like you just have an absolutely stacked bench and team. I just want to see you put it together, and I think you can absolutely be just steamrolling some people later on this season, Dave. Your team looks phenomenal. And probably should be up in A class, but these two I think are just a little bit ahead of the game on everybody else. And number three, it is Tyler. Um, Despite all the issues with Atlanta's team, the issues do not revolve around the offense. Matt Ryan is absolutely slinging it and destroying it out there, and being able to start both Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I think you're in a really good position out there because I think that offense is absolutely going to click. Now, if it has a bad week, then you're probably in trouble. But if AJ Green comes back after the trade deadline, because I think that's probably what he's doing. He's playing the "oh, I'm injured, I can't play" thing, and I think that's what a lot of people think too. That's not some deep insight and new thought. I think you can just put him in over one of them if you want. I think this is going to be a really, really good team. To have a lot of value in though Atlanta moving forward because that offense looks absolutely clicking right now. And then at other positions, you have Keenan Allen, who is absolutely crushing it out in Charger land. Leonard Fournette, who looks really, really good this year. Definitely looking like he's going to be making a play for a top five running back at the end of the season. Chris Carson, who, if he can just avoid fumbles and he can avoid getting in the doghouse, I think he is looking really, really good this year as well. And you have Rashad Penny, who, again, is another very good player. You know, if they just keep leaning on one or the other, that's fine. As long as you know which one it's going to be, I think your team's going to look really good at running back. And then at tight end, you have Hunter Henry, who came out of nowhere last week after the injury. A lot of people are thinking, oh, he's going to come back slow. We'll see how he looks, blah, blah, blah. Dude just lit it up right away. So, Tyler's team is the first of these top three teams. And they're top three teams because they are absolutely studded out from top to bottom. And they even have some pretty decent people on the bench, like AJ Green in this case, Rashad Penny. I don't like Carlos Hyde, but he's a guy a lot of people like apparently, so I'll mention him. But that's what's going on with Tyler. At number two, we have Matt M, who is just insanely criminally uh, underranked right now in the in this league. I don't know how his team is this good. Um, Again, it's one of those teams that is just studded up from top to bottom, and somehow he only has two wins. It's a crime. Um, he picked up Dak Prescott off of waivers after the season started, and he's been absolutely phenomenal. Adam Thielen's been on a tear. Yeah, he hasn't been looking very good for most of the season, but he's been getting touchdowns. He's been getting a lot of catches, and that's really all that you really can need. Yeah, regression might be a thing, but you're still absolutely killing it, and you can easily move him down to not even a starting position if you want when Curtis Samuel's off the bye. You just got a really great team set up right now. A lot of it is just people that I've punted to you or punted off of my team because I'm like, I don't think I need this guy. I can do something better, and then something better at home meme. Yeah, it's you got a lot of really good players. Michael Thomas was an absolute steal because he's been looking absolutely fantastic and might be like the number one wide receiver this week even. Um, then you got Carrion and David Johnson, who are both absolutely phenomenal. Dave Johnson in that offense definitely making it work. And as the offense begins to start clicking as the season moves on, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how good they can get. And I think Dave Johnson is going to benefit a lot from that, especially with a lot of goal line work and with a quarterback that can roll out. They can't exactly just stop the box or stop the run down the middle because they could just do a play action bootleg and then suddenly Kyler's running to the corner and you got 8 dudes in a pile in the middle of the field, and you're like, oh, cool, I guess we're just not stopping this guy then. So I think that's really helpful for him. And then as I was saying, DJ Chark has looked really good. DK Metcalf is definitely a thing out in Seattle. Mohamed Sanu's been getting a lot of targets out there. And Curtis Samuel, if Cam comes back, I think he could blow up and he could become that wide receiver 2-3 that a lot of people thought he was going to be going into the season. So love Matt M's team, but no one is as good as Mike. I mean, just look at this team. It is absolutely bonkers from top to bottom. There there are some players on this team that I look at and I go, ugh. For example, David Montgomery, I mentioned him earlier, having a very, very bad yards per carry, but they're just going to keep leaning on him, and eventually he's going to either be really good or not. Um, and that potential means that he's fine where he is. Um, but yeah, he just keeps putting up huge numbers of points. And this is a team right now that David Montgomery. Yeah, I'm poo-pooing him. He doesn't even need to be on the starting roster because you have Christian McCaffrey who is on a bye this week. You can throw him up into number one running back slot, and suddenly you have an absolutely studded out lineup, which is mostly names at this point. DeAndre Hopkins has been underperforming. Cooper Kupp's underperforming. Melvin Gordon's underperforming because he hasn't been playing. And Zach Ertz has been underperforming. But if those guys all become the real deal and they become what they actually are, people think they're supposed to be, I think this is going to be an absolutely insane team, better than it already is. So that's it for this week, and I will see you guys next week. I got to go get ready to do my cousin's Super Bowl. So I'll see you guys later. Have a good night, day. Enjoy football. Bye.